When you're ready, we're good to go.
Okay, Max. So I call this Waldeboro Planning Board to order Thursday. We have a quorum. We have Barbara, Johnny, Sarah, and myself, as well as John Stone, the town planner, and our scribe, Susan Alexander. Any adjustments to the?
And Jim.
I said Jim.
And Jeff's actually at the door right now.
Oh, okay, great. Okay.
We're just starting.
Said, say your name, Jim. I was reading off my little list here with check marks. We're there with a check mark, so if I didn't say your name, it wasn't on purpose, that's for sure.
So in the middle, Jeffrey Erskine just showed up.
Hey, Jeff. Okay. So adjustments to the agenda. Okay, any citizens' comments from the terminal application? Okay, there being none, we move right to Terminal 3425 Highway.
So Chuck Campbell will be representing the CCOT trucking.
Yep.
Want to go ahead with that?
I'm assuming everybody has seen the plan. The CCOTs want to construct a metal building to have as a terminal for their trucking business. They have been filling the land there to make the parking area and a pit level pad for the building. I have put together a site plan, which I believe you all have and hopefully have had a chance to look at. I'm sure there will be questions and I'd be more than happy to try to address them.
Chuck,
Yes,
can I ask you a question?
you sure can.
On the actual facility, the trucks are gonna be serviced inside the building and, washed and the oil change and all that. Is there any concern or regard for, say, the runoff of effluents or any kind of petroleum products or what have you on the lay of the land that it might drain somewhere, possibly that it shouldn't? How do you guys address that?
I'm making an assumption here
Sure, okay.
that they're gonna do all their maintenance inside and they're going to have receptacles for any drain oil or waste oil.
Right.
And I believe that they have a contract with, I don't know if it's Clean Harbors or whoever, to come in and take that away.
I see.
Yeah.
So they're taking, okay, good.
Could I interrupt for just a sec? You're breaking. I don't know whether it's me. Is everybody else getting out or is it just me?
I think it's just you. Scott, you may want to just take off the camera. That usually improves the capabilities for people.
Yeah, turn the video off. And
Is what?
Yeah, turn the video off.
Okay, let me try doing that.
And all right, so so Scott, you haven't- I'm gonna just take away the. Yep.
Okay,
So Scott, were you able to hear that question and answer?
you try that and see if that helps.
So Scott, did you hear the question and answer from Johnny?
Basically, yeah, I just didn't want to go too much further without, where I'm missing here and there. So if that doesn't work, I will. Changing rooms. I've got a new, but apparently it's not doing a great job.
a common problem. So Johnny, was your question answered?
Yeah, oh, yes, it was, yes, yeah.
Could I ask a question?
Go ahead, Barbara.
Chuck, could you please describe in a little bit more detail the site plan? You've got, for instance, your site plan doesn't indicate any of the grade changes or any of the slopes. So the filigree around the perimeter of trees, are they there? Are those trees on their property? Are they on the neighbor's property? Or what if we get left of our site here? And how far does the grading extend?
The grading basically extends to the trees, and probably that tree line is a little closer to the parking than it should be. But the tree, there is trees on their property, and the grading basically goes to the trees.
So on the sides as well as the back, there are still trees on the property?
Yes.
And maybe someone could, maybe I should have been able to understand the DOT stuff, but is it imperative to have that ditch between the entry and the exit? Or how does that work at the entrance?
They, DOT forced them to do that. They did
With a
not.
space,
What's that?
with a space between them?
Yes. That was a requirement by DOT.
Because it's not labeled in any way. I was just wondering.
You mean the, Chuck, do you mean the space,
Right.
the space between that they're separating the entrance from the exit? Not the space, not the
Right.
space. Okay, I think maybe, Barbara, you talking about the space between the road and the property, or?
Nope, I'm talking about the fact that now when you drive by, there's a really, well, to me, it looks like a dangerous pit between the exit and the entrance ways. And how is that going to get, is that going to get resolved? Is everybody happy with that?
Right,
It
the
just looks
culvert,
dangerous.
the culvert, that's what I would call the culvert, correct? Is that a,
Culvert's usually a pipe that's covered over and flush with the ground. This is more like a retaining pond between the entrance and the exit.
Well,
So-
they basically had that filled in totally across there. And I assumed DOT would make them put a curb there to separate the entrances, but DOT made them dig the hole because there is a culvert under there, and they said it was too long for a single culvert, so they had to dig all the way down to where the culvert was and have that big gully.
Okay, so it's filled in to grade now? Over
Nope, it's a-
that gap? Is that
No,
what you're saying?
no, it was originally, they had filled that in, and DOT made them dig it out.
Wow. Okay, is there gonna be signage on Route 1?
Like signage to warn of the ditch or signage of the property?
Both the address, the business, and in and out, I guess.
There will be, and I should have had it on the plan, but I wasn't aware that it was restricted to one way in and one way out until I saw some correspondence from DOT a few days ago. But yes, there will be in and out signs put up.
Okay, all of this is leading up, in my mind, these questions about what's happening with the front is we've got a little bit of space to kind of address the buffering issues or some vegetation and but no suggestion of what you might do to dress up the the front of the lot along Route 1.
The ditch?
Well, with this basically just being a big parking area here, there really is not a place to so-called dress it up between the curb cuts.
Well, you've got 30 feet, 30 to a minimum 30 to 40 feet on either side of the parked area on both sides, north and south.
So you're saying you want them to eliminate the existing vegetation and put new vegetation in?
No, I'm saying I don't quite believe what you're showing for trees here on the front. There's a requirement for 15 feet of vegetation of, a buffering vegetation, something along Route 1 for businesses going in to make the project, to make it as nice as we can for the town. And there's just no notes on this plan or this proposal about what you might do. It could be just grass, I don't know. So, but there's nothing on the plan yet that describes that.
Is that something that the board is actively pursuing now? Because when the auto body shop or repair shop that's about Tyler Towing,
Right.
it's about on the hill, he wasn't forced to do any of that. And
Yep, things fall through the cracks, Chuck. Yeah, but it is on the ordinance. It is in the ordinance.
I'll make, I'm sorry, I'll make a quick note that the Route 1 buffer that I believe you're referring to, section 7.1.2.3, it stated a waiver is requested as this would interfere with MDOT standards for the entrance, exit, and culvert placement, just so people are aware of that. Now the waiver hasn't been granted, so that's part of where this discussion actually falls into place.
right,
Just for people at home who haven't seen this application.
So one other thing about that space between the entrance and the exit. So I assume, does DOT come out and look at it? And it's
Yeah.
approved it?
well, DOT came out there again when it was all flat and basically made them do that. And I wasn't there, but I was told that DOT came basically while they was doing it to make sure that they did it properly.
It just looks like if someone was running into an issue, like, suddenly had a flat tire driving along the road and they had to pull over suddenly, that they would have a very bad experience. I know.
Believe me, Barbara, that was my comment when I first saw what he was doing.
Right.
I thought it was kind of crazy, but then I found out again that DOT forced him to do that.
Right.
So they insisted on 2 culverts as opposed to one long culvert, is basically what you're saying.
That's what I was taught. Again, I wasn't at the meeting with DOT. All I know is what I was told.
Because that's, it's kind of concerning. And I know, there was already an incident that that the fire chief is concerned about, where there was a truck that went in there
Right,
into that section and
right.
So I would hate to go back and forth with this, but it sounds like that, at least in the building of this part, that the applicant did what made sense and had a solid area there, and the DOT made him change it, but I think clearly the fire chief is concerned based on the letter that he sent to the board and And at least Barbara is concerned about this as well as I am. And I'm just wondering if there's some way to follow up. Let me, related to this, could I ask a question related? When I recall that there was we had a pre-app discussion with the applicant regarding what was upcoming with this. And we were concerned at that point because there was some discussion about trucks backing into the site from Route 1, and that was the way that this was going to work. And the way I would understand from this drawing and what you have from the DOT, that there's an entrance and an exit, and that implies that the trucks will in fact pull straight directly onto the site and then pull out directly from the site, and there wouldn't be any backing in and out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. So that part is better.
So if, Scott, if it's all right, I did receive an email from Brian Reeves. He's the engineer who signed off on the permit. If you would like to read it. I sent an email to him asking him about what was approved
Okay.
with the pre-application and the talks of backing into it, what the thoughts were, and I'll just read the email word for word. I do recall this applicant as it was a long process to bring the entrance into compliance. When we did work with Mr. Seacott, we offered two 22-foot wide entrances with a one-way flow on it or a single 42-foot entrance. Mr. Seacott chose the two 22-foot option, and we later agreed to allow him to widen this to 30 feet entrances with 10 to 12-foot radiuses. So what you see now.
Okay.
If they are having issues driving into the entrance, we would be agreeable to place a single 42-foot entrance, though I do not see how a 30-foot wide entrance with 10 to 12-foot radiuses is not adequate. Backing in from Route 1 is prohibited. The entrance allowed by department is for one-way flow in and out and is required to be signed or striped appropriately. The entrance was also required to be paved to the edge of the right-of-way. Mr. Seacott's application to you is not consistent with the requirements of the entrance permit issued by the department. The department never received, and this was something that I brought to the board's attention when I got it. The department never received a copy of the entrance permit recorded in the registry of deeds. Without being recorded, the entrance is invalid. So they are working with the Seacotts for amending and ensuring that permit does get recorded this time.
Okay.
Department will review the site compliance. The town may consider asking for turning movement drawings, CADD, from Mr. Seacott if he feels the driveway is not of an adequate width.
Okay.
Then
Go
again,
ahead, John.
I just had a question about in the summer and these trucks coming in and I'm assuming is there any concern about backup of traffic and Route 1 in the summer is horrible as far as getting in and out and that causing some type of a congestion in that specific entrance and exit?
It shouldn't cause any more congestion than say when the semis pull into RZR hardware just up the road. I mean, it's the same.
Right. So you're saying that they've done some studies or they look at it and do a kind of a plan and say it's okay to, it's not going to cause any traffic issues or anything like that or something?
No, a traffic engineer was not hired to do a study. Again, it's no different than RZR or down east. Trucking was down the road. I mean, they're
just a similar thing.
Yeah,
similar.
Okay. Yeah.
So it seems like the concern from the site is I think it seems to me that the entrance and exits are adequate in terms of the width of them and the curvature of them. It's really, I think, an issue of edge of the road falling into the culvert issue. And, maybe there's a way to make that safer with, curbing or fencing or something to make it more visible that not apt to slide into it.
Can I
Go ahead,
ask
Bob.
something? Okay, so this ditch is not meant to collect water. We're passing water through a culvert from the north culvert down. It's just continuing south, right, alongside Route 1. So the purpose of this ditch is not to collect and dissipate water. It's just, they didn't want a super long culvert. They wanted
Right.
the water to pass from north to south.
That
Okay,
is
so
correct.
why can't that thing be filled in with real chunky gravel with lots of airspace between it? So at least we can bring the bottom up, water can still go down, still pass through, but cars aren't going to get trapped in there. Why couldn't something like that happen? I'm not a road engineer. I'm just,
Well, neither am I. But what I was told was DOT had told them that a culvert, that as long as it would need to be, they could not clean it because it was too long. My assumption is they would say the same thing if we wanted to fill that with stone.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure enough water goes either left or right that would ever cause a problem, but
can you put a screen uphill of the culvert? I mean, a grill, something? I don't know. I just picture a Volkswagen Bug being at the bottom of that thing just during the summer traffic. But
believe me, Barbara, I have had that same thought, and my wife makes the same comment every time we drive by.
Yeah, it just.
I mean, I don't know if DOT knows how deep that thing is. Do they know how deep it is to where the culvert had to be?
I am told by the owner that when he did that DOT representatives were there to make sure that he did it correctly. If that's the case, I would say yes, they saw it, know how deep it is.
Yeah. Well, let's,
So Scott, if you don't mind,
I don't.
Chief Smelter's actually just in the budget committee right now, and
Yeah.
he would be fine actually quickly coming in to explain his letter a bit more if the board wants to pin the discussion on the ditch for a little bit later.
Well, I was just you're reading my mind, Max. I don't even have my camera on. I thought that we could go back to this and see if there are any other issues we want to cover here. So let's do that.
Like to tell you, I've got a laundry list.
Shoot.
I guess the first question I have is can anyone speak to why this work that has happened in the first place without permits?
So,
I can't answer that.
yeah, I was about to say, Chuck, you were brought in
Right, I
maybe
was
September, October.
November, December.
So
Blame it on COVID.
blame it on COVID. So initially, what happened was, I think December, January is when the town was first of last year is when the town was, hold on. December 2020, January 2021 is when the town was initially aware that this actually happened. And we kept checking, and we did reach out to the CCOTS and never got a response, which is why you saw in your packets, there was the notice of violation where all this filling was happening and nothing was done. And then the stop work order was sent out in April, informing the CCOTS that they were essentially acquiring a fine of $100 a day since February 1st because they were not addressing the issue. The Department of Transportation was also aware of the violation at the time. And that was getting addressed, I think in March. I don't know their timeline exactly. And eventually the CCOTS did come to us, I think in May or June, and said that they had to focus on the Department of Transportation ones first, because that was, the DOT just showed up with an excavator at their site, threatening to actually stop the work on that one. And usually when we have matters where the state is involved, Stan and I usually take a step back and let the state handle the matter at that time, because with DOT saying you don't have an entrance, that usually ends our issue at that point, and we still had the fines racking up at that point. So around June, the DOT issue was being resolved, and then the CCOT said, well, now we can have this addressed, and here's the building permit. To which I said, no, you're not doing a building permit. You have to do the planning board, because of the trucking terminal. There were, and I'll just shorten the summary of it to, then came the August meeting with the pre-application. And then when I informed them of everything that had to be done, I then didn't hear from them until Chuck was getting on board. But by that time, I then had my medical leave, and Stan was dealing with some other matters at the time. So during this time, they still technically actually had the fees incurred on them since February 1st of last year. But we just haven't addressed it because we were letting the state handle it first, and then they were starting to address their local matters.
Thank you for that, Max. It's probably not the purview of the planning board, but I for one would like to see the penalties, the fees start from day one and go all the way up, because this whole problem started because the fill was begun without any planning board approval or permits. That's why they had to fix it with the state. That's why we're here now. And secondly, I'm sure we're going to have enough work to do after this that's there'll probably be another session. And I hope at that session, the owner shows up. So enough of that. Chuck, looking at let's talk about your area of expertise and what you can do for us. Looking at the site plan, it looks like the developed area is greater than an acre. And I say that because it's what, 200, tough to find the right dimensions, but it's really, really close, I guess, to the acre that initiates the need for stormwater permit. And I guess we'd like to see a detailed calculation, excuse me, and we'd like to see a detailed calculation of just how that 42,644 is done. You have that?
What I did, I take my computer system and I put a boundary around it and I asked it how big it is.
Including the building.
Yes. So I don't have manual calculations of this. I just have, I asked my computer to do it for me.
Okay, well, that's a fair answer. Where is the water supply coming from? Potable water.
If you, let's see where.
It's a proposed well.
To the right of the building, there is a proposed well location. The well has not been drilled yet.
Okay, yep. I understand that the back area where the possible septic is kind of wet.
It very well could be that they may have trouble getting a septic design there. That has not been done yet. And that may be another whole issue.
And is it, I'm sorry, Jim, are you still have more questions?
Well, yeah, I do. I mean, I think that one's an open-ended one that we're going to continue on later, but I think that's going to be a condition of anything that happens, which is normal anyway.
Right.
Chuck, the other thing I would like to ask directly is, driving by, it's difficult to tell where the lot line is and where the bottom edge of the embankment lies. And I'm not quite sure how much of the existing trees are really left versus, because the paving is at the top of the filled area. And then there's at least a 45-degree slope to come down to the original grade. I wonder how much of the buffer zone is actually taken up by that slope. Is that something that can be shown?
We may have to hire a surveyor to go out there to locate all that.
And the reason I bring that up is because that whole 30-foot setback where it says existing trees to remain may not be there at all, or not much of it left once you have filled it in with the embankment.
Because of the grade, I just want to make sure I understand to capture this, Jim, that because of the grade from the current height of the surface gravel to the original height of the land where the trees are.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And even if it's been filled in around the trees, those trees have a very limited lifespan.
Yeah.
If you're interested.
I guess then the last thing I have, and then Barbara, you can have the floor. I think we'd want to make a request. I think it might be subject to DOT approval, that there be a guardrail barricade encircling that open area between the two culverts to ensure that there aren't any future accidents there, as has already happened. That would also help with the traffic flow and, the entrances and the exits and all that.
Can I add something to that, Jim? I think it's worth considering because that is built up. And I think it's related to your question of the grade. Because it's built up and there's grade down along the edges towards the boundary and the trees, that if a guardrail, it may be worth considering a guardrail on the north side of the north driveway and the south side of the south driveway, as well as in between, depending on how deep that is on either side.
Oh, yeah,
So-
good. Yeah, I agree. In fact, I think the last thing I said was we should circle it. It should be completely enclosed with a guardrail. Front, back, north, south, east, west.
Yeah, I was meaning parallel along Route 1. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, parallel to Route 1 on the Route 1 side, parallel to Route 1 on the parking lot side,
Yep.
and then on the radius.
Okay. Maybe that's something too we can discuss when Snutzer comes. Okay. So that's it, Jim?
That's my current list. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Barbara, were you going to go next? Did you have something?
Well, had to do with, Max, maybe you can answer this question. Are septic areas considered impervious surfaces?
Are you asking
Part of-
regarding what?
Are they part of that calculation?
Yes, they are. I actually spoke with an individual from the Maine DP about this very recently. And it's not even developed, it's disturbed land in general. So with what they saw, it is likely something that will need a DP permit, but I've asked them to potentially do a site visit on that matter.
I'm just wondering where we are percentage-wise on developable.
I sent an email to Dustin Dorr, and I have talked to an engineer who does not agree with that,
With my statement or Dustin's,
with your statement.
that they calculate the disturbed area,
Right.
I'm speaking to what Dustin said.
As I said, I sent Dustin an email, and he has not responded to me.
I can follow up with him on that. then.
Yep, yep.
He can speak to you then.
What the engineer said is the disturbed area, you might have to do a permit by rule,
Right,
but you don't need to do a full stormwater permit,
right.
which is, well,
And maybe that's the,
that's very different. That's night and day. A permit by rule for the septic system is very minor, whereas a full stormwater permit is major.
and again, I'm repeating what
No,
Dustin from DEP said,
I hear you.
so.
I'm not trying to be hard to get along with.
So we're not going to resolve it here, but I think as an action item, we have to determine whether or not the stormwater permit is required.
Yeah,
But Barbara, was that what you were, was that?
Well, sort of. I was just looking at the paperwork to see if there's any notes about what percentage of this lot is now developed in, as far as the Route 1A commercial. Are we anywhere near the max?
Net developable acreage?
Lot coverage is 55% and 70% is permitted in the zone.
It's only 55 now, as drawn? 55 plus the septic when it goes.
Well, no, I don't agree that the septic is considered developed area in terms of lot coverage because it's not impervious.
Well, I was just talking on the disturbed area. I agree with you on that, that's not
Right,
developed.
right.
Okay,
okay.
but it's only 55 now, Chuck, huh?
Right.
Okay,
Ronnie has his hand up.
but we are possibly over an acre, so
Again,
doesn't that kick in?
that's something I can double check with Dustin after this.
Okay.
That would kick in a stormwater management plan. Is that right, Max?
Well,
Again,
it's my understanding with the engineer that I spoke to, if you have an acre of impervious, then you need to do a full stormwater permit. If you have more than that that's disturbed, but you still have less than an acre of impervious, you may have to do a permit by rule to do the disturbance of, like, for the septic system.
So if they pave it in the future, which I think one of these notes say,
Well,
then they,
I find it difficult to believe they're gonna pave the septic system in the future.
no, I mean the parking lot and everything. I mean,
Well,
doesn't it?
it's impervious right now. Paving is not gonna change the impervious.
Okay,
Gravel is considered impervious.
okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Certainly is disturbed. Okay,
okay, Johnny has it.
So, okay, sorry, Johnny, just for a sec. I'm trying to capture this. So Max, are you comfortable that this application, because I think for what we're saying here and the dimensions that we have, that this will not require a stormwater plan? Is that correct, Max?
Might be the permit by rule that Chuck was saying,
Okay,
not this massive plan. But again, that's
Okay.
something I am leaving to Dustin on.
okay. Okay, so I've got, so that's a to be determined.
And I think that goes hand in hand to the request I made that we see the extent of the filled area. So I'm almost certain that's going to be more than an acre.
Yeah. Okay, yep. Okay, I'm sorry, Johnny, your turn.
Okay, Chuck, I was just gonna ask you, looking over the blueprint, it says existing trees to remain. Is there a plan to cut down many trees or what is that? What's that about?
Well-
I mean, will that affect drainage if you take too many out or how does that play into it?
Right now, the trees along the side, no more coming out.
No more coming
Right.
out. So you're not gonna cut anything or prune them or anything of that?
Right, right.
All right.
One other question, the adjacent lots are what? Are they commercial lots? Is there a home to the left or the right? Is there?
The abutters?
Home to the north, I think.
Well, two abutters are actually here tonight. Well, I say two abutters, yeah. Two are here tonight. They can certainly speak about the lots that are there and what they're like if they want. But I don't know if you want to do that now or wait until the end when citizens would more or less talk on the application.
Well, I just want to, we may be almost, if we might be close to done with board member questions, and then we could open it up. Are there any other board member questions or comments?
Well, if the plan, this was brought up earlier, but if the plan did indicate where the edge of the fill was, and if we knew if it was still 15 or 20 feet from the property edge, or if we knew something about the extent of that, we would know if there's any, tree buffers along the side of the property. We just, we don't know that from looking at this information at this time. And something so are either of these neighbors right next door or in the neighborhood?
Well, let's go to the neighbors in a sec. If there's no other board member questions, I just want to make sure. Sarah's still muted if she wanted to pop in with something, and I can see Jeffrey. So are there any other board member questions or comments?
I don't have any. I'm just following along.
Sure. Okay, so why don't we, Max, if you want to, if any of the residents, abutters present want to speak, then now's a good time.
And we have Tyler Lupian and we have Jen Merritt. There's no one here at the town office, so Jen, Tyler, if either of you wish to speak on, oh, I see Jen's hand up. Jen, if you want to go ahead and speak on the matter.
I'll explain where the property is. I own a strip of property north of the trucking terminal, about 50 feet wide, that goes back about 360 feet. And I own the property immediately behind the trucking terminal. And my neighbors, the Winchenbatches, are on the south side of the trucking terminal. So if that helps to get an idea for the board of what it is. My house is right next to the Winchenbatches. We have very narrow lots that are right facing on Route 1. So we're kind of close to each other, 3, 4 of our houses. I can easily see from my deck and right into the back of the trucking terminal property. Of course, now there's no leaves, so I have a great view, can see everything. In the summer, I can still see, even with the trees, there's not much tree coverage between the Winchenbatches and the terminal left. So that answers that. I did send in a letter just with some questions and some concerns. And I don't know if now it's appropriate to bring that up, Max, or how do you usually do this?
I would feel free to go ahead, Max, unless you have something.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, unless Tyler wants to speak before that.
Sure.
I'm not hearing anything, so guess you have the floor, Jen.
I see Tyler took his mic off. Maybe he wanted wants to speak? Or am I on? Nope, okay. All right, so I just thought, I went through the site plan review plan, the submitted plan. And I thought I'd just address some of the things that were popping through my head as I was thinking about having lived here, you know, during the development of this and so forth, and what may or may not happen or evolve over time. The things I've experienced over the last year, or a little bit longer than a year, I would say there were a lot of noise issues in the summertime mostly. I suspect perhaps it was worse during the time when all the fill was coming in and the earth was being moved and so forth. I can express that I hear the idling truck engines, and I was told, I don't know if this is true, but someone said to me that the trucks have to keep their engines on because they're diesel, and sometimes they need their battery continued charging for either heating or cooling, because a lot of the truckers live in their trucks, or if it's a refrigeration unit or whatever. So that was one thing. If that is common, because I don't know enough about that, if that is common and trucks will be idling frequently, I'm depending on the direction of the wind, that might someday, you know, be a pain for the fumes or whatever. Fortunately, in the summertime, the prevailing winds are mostly south or southwest here. So a lot of the winds are just blowing in towards the north. And so it wouldn't be blowing it down towards me. But it would be blowing it to, so on the other side of my 50-foot strip north of the property is a 2-family house. I think that's owned by, oh, I can't remember the name, but there's a couple families there who rent. Let's see, the other concern that, or thought that went through my head was over, I would say, late summer, early fall, there was disruption on Route 1 traffic from trucks trying to get in and out of the property. Unusually so. I can say, Chuck, and I know you know your stuff. RZR, I rarely see, and I think they may have a wider entrance and a little better of an angle to get in and out for the trucks. But I've never seen the kinds of traffic backups before here that happened maybe a few times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. You know, it's just tourist season, you know, that's what happens when that kind of thing happens. I had another question about exterior lighting and how that was going to go, because like I said, the trees don't provide a lot of the months of the year a buffer really for lighting, and I just wondered how much lighting there would be. I did check the times and so forth. I had a couple questions in my letter about that too. And also the stormwater management and protecting water bodies, groundwater, refuse disposal, and actual hours of operation when trucks will be entering and leaving or parking overnight. So one question was, will the semi-tractor trailer trucks be parked inside of the building and outside of the building? Because my experience has been that trucks are parking there overnight and then heading out in the morning, almost like a rest stop. And if people are doing that and staying over for a rest stop, does that mean it's going to be a rest stop for truckers?
That's because I can't hear.
I have no idea why there's any principle law.
It's a fax.
What is it?
With the fax machine here is running, and it's loud enough that I can't hear what you're saying.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault.
Okay, so should I stop for a moment?
It has stopped at this point.
Okay. So where was?
so you were at actual hours of operation, I think. You were
Right.
talking about?
Yeah, if the trucks are going to stay overnight, like a rest stop for truckers, are there going to be other services that they're going to be offered? Are they thinking of food or water or showers, and how many trucks might be staying overnight? And let's see.
You have an answer for that, Chuck?
Not really.
Okay,
Yeah, those are all their trucks. I mean, it's not for general trucking. It's only for their own trucks. So
okay, these are their own trucks.
yes,
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
right.
So they did state in the site plan, it was a little confusing. And it was, I think it was under the exterior lighting section, 7.1.4. And they talked about security lighting being left on overnight. And I wasn't sure what that lighting was and where it was. But they also said they said that unless the business was open for business after working hours. And so that made me wonder, so it says working hours are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the site plan review doc.
Right.
But it also says that unless the activity is open for business. So I didn't know what that meant. Like, would they be open for business at night?
Well, they'll have their mechanic and their office staff that will work during the day. But obviously, when a truck comes back from a trip, I'm not sure that they can guarantee that they're going to get back to all that will remain between 7 and 5.
So is that, do you know, Chuck, if that just means that they're just going to be driving in and then they take off and leave the truck, or, I'm not quite sure how the whole business is going to operate.
Well, I'm not intimately involved in that business, but I'm assuming, again, much like Northeast Transport, they'll come and when they get back, they'll park their vehicle, and then they're going to go home.
Okay. All right.
They
Okay, so Chuck,
they don't live in their trucks in there. I mean,
Okay.
some folks do, but
Okay.
yeah.
So to that point, all that's shown on the site plan are parking spots for cars, and it doesn't show any parking area for the trucks unless they're all going to be inside overnight. I think that's something that needs to be addressed on the site plan. What is the plan? That the trucks, I think, are parked where the building's eventually going to go.
Right. I believe the intent is the trucks will be parked inside the building.
So I read in the site plan something about the number of trucks in the building, the number of spaces. I can't remember if it was 2 or 4. I can't remember. Anyway, okay.
That's why another reason why it'd be great to have the owner around. Okay, while we're on it, another thing to look at, if you would, it's for the lighting that Jen brings up. On the site plan, it shows 2 pole lights
Right.
Aimed at the building.
Right.
And of course, that's also going to be aiming at her property because she sits behind the building. Would you consider putting those lights on the face of the building?
No, then they'd be facing towards the road.
Right. And my house isn't behind the property. It is next door to the Winchenbatches. And basically, I'm looking through their tree buffer on their property. It's just that our properties are so small. Well, their property is pretty smaller, narrow kind of. And
Okay.
they're all, everything's kind of close together around here.
So, but those, I guess the question, I think, because I've been thinking the same that Jim is thinking, that those, if there was a way to do the lighting, that I'm assuming that this is basically security lighting, and let's say a truck is coming, even on parts of the year, it comes, even if it came in by 5, it's dark. So that there's a need for some lighting, but you don't want that lighting, you don't want it shining onto the road, but you also don't want it shining directly back to your house. So is there a way to situate the lighting, whether it's from the north side facing the north side of the building and from the south facing the south side of the building, so it doesn't face Route 1 or face your house. Is that kind of what you're getting at, Jim?
Yes.
So I think that's a very reasonable thing to add as a contingency, is figure out a way to work the lighting so it's not, you know, so it doesn't create an issue for those houses.
Jen?
Yeah.
Jen, can I ask you a question?
Yeah,
This is Johnny Cosno here. As a respiratory therapist, I'm just concerned, or how bad are those diesel fumes? You know, is it something that gets you dizzy? I mean, does it happen often? Is it stifling?
actually, it's not too often. It's not too bad. I imagine it would be worse on a hot day, you know, rather than
July?
Yeah, July, August. We're very fortunate in Waldemar. I think that a lot of us, at least south of Route 1 or on Route 1, we get a lot of wind
Okay,
coming, you know, from the south and the southwest and the west, actually. And that actually pushes those fumes into the other people's, you know, like the 2-family house or whatever. I would imagine that somebody might want to check them, but you know, it's not serious right now. I just was concerned because I couldn't tell how large the facility was going to become, how many trucks it might end up servicing, you know, that kind of thing, and what was the future going to be. It might impact, you know,
But getting
that
the
that
truck,
was, we spend a lot of time idling because the guys.
their own truck. It's not,
Mhm.
it's not like it's a public facility where
Right.
any trucker can just come in and,
it's not a truck stop.
right,
Right.
right.
Right. So the other thing, I don't know if you guys, I didn't see it on the design, was there's a seasonal stream going behind that property. It might even be going at the back of the property that goes basically from somewhere behind Ace Hardware all the way down the backs of these properties, and it drains off down by the DOT wetland area. It usually, well, this winter, the past 2 winters, it's been full all winter because we keep getting rain and snow and rain and snow. But it usually is pretty full, I would say, for most of the spring, and then starts to dry up once the heat hits sometime in June. And so I don't know if I just wanted to raise awareness to that, because it wouldn't bother me per se, I would imagine, although if that stream gets blocked off somehow from moving, the wet is going to pool somewhere north of this property. It could end up pooling on my 50-foot thing, who knows, and, you know, cause the need for some mitigation, or it could pool behind the house, the 2-family, or the restaurant, or the Ace Hardware, the old restaurant. I mean, I'm not sure what that, I've never seen it blocked. Just wanted to make sure that awareness was there for people when they are moving earth.
Mhm.
And let's see, I'm looking at my letter. Oh, and I also don't know enough about how Phil reacts to if it would let rain flow or water flow through it, or if because it had to be compacted. So I don't know how all of the stormwater is going to act because of all the fill. That's just kind of an open question. And you mentioned, Chuck, something about, or in the site plan, it mentions disposal. I was wondering if it didn't mention anything about engine oil. I thought engine oil is some kind of a industrial liquid waste or something. You said someone's going to pick that up, right?
Yes, yeah. That's not a hazardous waste, but
Right.
it is a waste.
Right. And so all I wanted to make sure was, because we mentioned floor drains and the floor drains that will run into a sand oil separator. I
Right,
just wanted to be sure that any other maintenance fluids or whatever would not be allowed to enter the groundwater or the earth.
right.
Right. So, and that because of our wells, because we're all wells here in our septic fields, and it's there's a lot of water and fluid running under our land. I can tell because my land moves all the time in the spring. I mean, it's pretty crazy.
Yep.
And you mentioned something about building above or below ground, or no, maybe. Is there anything in there about building above or below ground storage tanks in the future?
No, I asked them and there's not their intent to even have storage, fuel storage tanks there.
Okay, and would they be, if anything changes in the future, are they required to go before the planning board again and notify the abutters again?
But they would need to get permits from,
Okay. And what was the other thing here? Oh, and the proposed septic system in the site plan. I wondered, it looks like it would border directly on my property perhaps. And I'm wondering what the ramifications might be, because if that's, so I don't know how big a septic system and then a septic field would have to be. And would that, is that something that I should be concerned about if I want to use my property behind there, for example? And then there was a sewage disposal facility mentioned in 8.3 and 10.14.1.2. Is that the same as the septic system displayed on the site plan design? I was trying to understand how the whole thing worked.
that part you got me. I don't know what you're talking about there. Let me see the.
I can't hear whoever's talking.
I'm sorry, that was me, Scott. I'm trying to find, where are you talking? 10 point section what?
10.14.1.2 and 8.3, they both mentioned a sewage disposal facility, and I didn't know if that was meant to be the same as the septic system.
I think that's what that is.
Okay, so that would be the same thing, like what's on. the
Yeah,
list. Okay.
should be. And that would have to pass muster as an approved, they have to get an approved septic system design before they can get approval to build it, and it has to meet whatever those requirements.
That
you
is
can-
correct.
Is there a setback requirement for septic systems on property lines?
I don't believe that there is,
Okay,
and
Unfortunately, Stan's not here to answer that
Yeah,
question.
and I don't think there is either.
I think that's all I tried to go through it and just say, well, is this something I would be concerned about or not? And so I
Well,
think hit everything.
we appreciate your comments. I think the biggest thing that I've captured from your comments that require some follow-up is the lighting. I think we've either answered or discussed all of the other items in terms of follow-up. But if
I
I'm,
think the other issue Jen brought up that may deserve some follow-up is the impact of all the site fill that was done without a permit on the natural water flow and drainage.
yeah, okay.
Thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I think also too, well, yeah, it'd be interesting, and there's no way from this plan to see it, but from what I've looked at in terms of terrain, the primary, ditch or water flow actually goes in the front where the culvert's going to be. And you mentioned, Jen, that there's water flow behind the property, but I don't have anything to we don't have anything to go by on that in terms of drawing or terrain, so some follow-up there as well.
Could be because it's seasonal.
Yeah. Okay. Any other, well, thank you, Jen. Any other citizens' comments? Tyler, did you have any comments? He doesn't, you don't have to log on to say that you don't, if, just, did you have
Test.
something? Okay, please.
I'm sorry, I said it in the chat, but I tried to talk earlier and my mic was not working. Can you hear
Oh,
me all
okay.
right?
I can.
Oh, now it's up.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for your time. Um, So my family jointly owns property across the street from this lot that extends basically from the toy museum south to there's a trailer that Bogues owns headed down the hill. It's about, I don't know, maybe 1,000 feet of frontage. So I guess my purpose of being here and talking to you is that we just had concerns about the entrance and exit and possible traffic flow with regards to a site that we may develop in the future. And that's why I'm here.
Mhm.
And I guess the one question that came of that is there currently a valid DOT entrance permit, or is that being re-looked at?
I got. So I received a letter from, well, the town office received a letter from the Department of Transportation on March 3rd, informing the Seacots that the permit does need to be resubmitted. And once it's approved, it then has to be on the registry of deeds. That's all I have. And that's a document that's available at the town office.
Okay, I think Max, you sent me a copy of that. So do we know, has it been resubmitted? Or is that not anything I can ask?
Well, you can ask anything.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's been resubmitted at this point. And when I read this, it says that the owner has to take action immediately within 60 days. If that doesn't happen, then he needs to reapply. That's the way that I read this.
Okay. All right.
I could be not reading it correctly, but that was what I read.
Okay. And I think that item needs some circling back before we finish with this. Tyler, did you have anything else? Any other comments on that or related or other items that you wanted to bring up?
No, that was about it. It just seems like
Okay.
it's having already a business on Route 1 in a place with good sight lines. It seems like it's just, a potentially constricting area with turn-ins and turn-outs. So I guess
Yep.
thanks for your time.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for coming. Okay, I'm trying to capture all these items that we've talked about here. Let's see.
Scott, can I make a comment?
Please, go ahead.
As far as lighting goes, there's already ordinances about lighting has to conform with dark skies kind of ideas about the type of lighting that is shielded. It's supposed to only go straight down onto the ground, doesn't go generally out. So if it's the proper type of lighting, that should mitigate a lot of that problem, although there are like 6 lights across the front of the building, but anyway, if the applicant can be sensitive to the fact that he's got households next door. But I'm not sure that, I'm not sure how we would frame some sort of contingency about the, that on the, on this discussion, since it's already sort of part of the ordinance. And unless we can put timing. But of course, the business wants to have nighttime security lighting. So how do you do that?
Yeah. So, I'm just gonna throw this out to the board before I've tried to capture a bunch of follow-up items, questions, concerns that we have. And it seems to me that there's enough here that unless someone feels differently, I'm not thinking that we would have a motion. Often we might have a motion to approve pending things. I think there's some things that I'm not, at least personally, I'm a little bit questionable about, that I think maybe we ought to just provide a list of questions and comments and table this to a future meeting. How does that comport with everybody's feeling on this?
Can, you know, I never say this, but is this worth a site visit by the board?
I think
It's
you're,
As Chuck was saying, you're not gonna do a survey that shows us where the grade is, but if the pins are, hopefully it's pretty clear where the property lines are.
okay.
Um,
I will capture that as agreeing that we not have a motion tonight. Is that fair?
And I also, Scott, I agree with your path forward. I think there's enough work to do, including getting the owner in front of the planning board. That's.
So with that in mind, for everybody's benefit, oh, I'm sorry, John, you were going to say something?
Well, I'm just gonna agree, I concur with
Okay.
you. Maybe Mr. Siccardi, it might be helpful if he maybe came.
Okay.
Ask him some-
Well, I think, yeah, I agree. And I think I'm wondering, here's what I've got. I've got that, I think that that it would be helpful to have some additional plans for us showing, one, the extent of the filled area and its effect on the buffer and the future maintenance of the buffer, both on the sides and the back of the site, since there are houses back there.
But there are no houses back there.
Well,
The houses are only to the side.
well, Jen said that she's behind the building.
No,
She owns property that wraps around behind this project.
Okay, but the house is on the side.
yeah,
Okay.
There's,
Her house is basically off of Route 1.
Right, okay.
On- yeah.
So, but I think that the plan, in terms of the buffer maintenance, and the plan should show the extent of the filled area, not just the extent of the top surface.
Gotcha.
And
No problem.
and show the truck parking, where the trucks are actually going to be parked, whether they're inside the building or not, is immaterial. I think what's important is the number of trucks involved and where they're going to be. And the lighting plan, just make sure that you've got a lighting plan that's going to do what it needs for the building security, but also takes into account the neighboring properties.
So
There are also-
what are you really looking for? I mean, we have shielded down lights here right now. Are you looking for actual cuts?
Those shielded downlights that are shown that are far away from the building, what are they lighting? They're not lighting the building if they're
the
facing.
front
out.
doors, doors, the truck doors.
Oh, the doors, they light the doors?
Yeah.
So
Going in
does
and out of the vehicle.
does everyone think, will that be, if that's acceptable, that it's not gonna light up the neighbors, then that's fine. If you're comfortable with that, Chuck.
mean,
The question was more about the pole lights aimed at the buildings and extra light flowing from those.
those are shielded down lights that are aimed back towards the building.
Okay. And then, obviously, there's this septic, will need approval. So that would be a contingency, whether or not it's addressed by the next time this is discussed. But then, there's this sort of combined issue of the traffic concerns, between Chief Smelter and the board relative to the DOT permit. And since this has to be either resubmitted or reapplied, I think that it'd be worth, and it's worth considering a site visit for that purpose, but I don't know, Max, whether it's possible to get some direct input between the board and the DOT and the chief on this issue relative to possible guardrails or whatever. But I think that's a thing that everyone ought to be comfortable with before anything goes further.
So you're asking more if, rather than, well, I guess similar to a condition, you want the guardrails, assuming the DOT finds them acceptable and does not cause an issue with the.
Well, yeah, something along those lines. I personally am comfortable with not requiring guardrails if we have a meeting and the chief and the DOT, everybody says, okay, this is either fine as it is, or we don't like this and this is how we should fix it. Guardrails is a potential solution. I don't want to impose a solution that is not necessarily effective or more expensive than it needs to be, but I think there's enough concern here that it ought to be followed up on. Is that fair?
Okay.
And that whole area sits in the MDOT right of way for Route 1. So there's certainly a principal player in making it, in accepting what's going to make it safe.
Mm-hmm. So the follow-up items are the traffic issues with a possible site visit, the septic, a plan showing the extent of the fill as it goes down to grade, confirming the percent developed area and how the filled area might affect the buffer maintenance, and that the plan should show the truck parking. Is there anything else that I missed there for follow-up?
I think you conflated a couple things, Scott.
Sure.
The site visit had to do with, in lieu of a survey that shows the edge of the fill, in my mind.
Oh,
And we
okay.
could see how far away it is from the property line and how much viable trees are really left as
Okay.
buffers.
Okay.
That could be one way, because I know it's going to take months to get a survey. You know, it's.
Oh, yeah, I didn't mean it had to be a survey necessarily, but I guess it would have to be. So yeah, that's fine. That's a good solution to that.
If the board wants to do it, is willing.
So I don't know if we're running through the list or not, but Chief Smelter actually just walked in. If do we want thoughts on the matter, or is it something that would probably be handled later based on the recommendation from Scott?
I'm up for both. I think hearing from him now would help all of us, I think, and even if it's just helping us think about, you know, the site visit or how we address it. If he's available and was willing to talk to us, that'd be great.
Do you want to talk?
Yeah, come up here where it's up here.
Here, I don't know who I'm talking to,
Yeah.
but I'm here.
Just right there, and then talk right into the laptop right here. Yep, so we've already talked about the Route 1 entrance and exits. The general consensus has been it is something that's a bit concerning, but they don't want to do something that won't address what you're concerned about. So if you don't mind just giving the,
No, my only concern is that it just doesn't happen again. And I don't have a solution to it. I just wanted them and you folks to just be aware of it and just try to come, have them come up with some sort of a solution that just prevents it. It took quite a bit of resources that night on the town's part. It hits my budget. And so I just like to just prevent it in the future. So if there's something that they could
the budget meeting is in the next room.
yes, I'm already getting there and had that tonight, so that's fresh on my mind.
Okay.
I'm not asking for anything cumbersome, or I don't want it to be, inhibitive for them. I just want it to be a safe thing for their employees, trucks to get in and out, and it just not happen again. So whatever
Okay.
they come up with, I'm good with it. You folks are good.
Okay,
with it.
thank you.
Does that make sense?
So Max, if there's a site visit, whether it's at a site visit or not, but if there's a site visit, is it possible to meet? Is it kosher, to be coin a term, for a planning board to meet with the DOT directly, or is that not a good idea? Or it just seems like,
So you're asking if the planning board meets at 3425 Atlantic Highway, if someone from DOT is there as well?
yes,
Yes, that's fine. It's a public meeting anyways, so people are allowed to be there, and it could just be in coordination with the Department of Transportation.
yeah, okay, because I think Barbara's suggestion of addressing some of that with a site visit makes a lot of sense. And if they could be there, that would be a really good way to try to come up with something that would fit everybody's needs. Because we just don't.
But that's only, that the site visit's only going to work if we can really determine, especially where the west sight line is. The one next to Winch and Bucks.
Mhm.
If we can't determine where that lot line is, then we don't know how close the fill is to the lot line.
Yep. So are you saying that we do need a plan showing that extent of the filled area or the slope there?
At a minimum, we need to know where the line is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm sorry for just jumping in very quickly. Do we need Paul for anything else?
I think that's fine. Thank you.
No, I just don't want any of my requests to be inhibitive or make them. I'm very supportive of the project and I want it to go forward, so I don't want anything to.
No, but it's important safety issue. So you guys have to go out and address those things, and as much as we'd like you to have a much bigger budget, we at the same time don't want you to have a much bigger budget because we're having a lot of accidents. So
Yeah. Fair enough.
that's the key.
Thank you for hearing my concerns. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so do you have enough, Chuck, from our input to, is there any other questions that you have for us, or any
No,
other questions?
I don't think so. I think
Okay,
what you need.
okay, so is the board okay with just leaving it to Max to try to schedule and coordinate a site visit and make sure that the abutters and Jen and Tyler and everyone's informed and coordinate with the DOT to get a public date to do all this?
Good, yep. Scott, the only thing you did a great job going through the list of concerns we come up with. Did you mention the determination of whether or not a stormwater permit's required, or what kind of stormwater permit is needed?
Well, I was putting that under I kind of had it under the plan to confirm the percent developed and confirm that there's no issues with the water flow behind the property. So is that capture what you're getting at?
Well, I think it's all part of the related issue, but I also think determination of just what type of permit is required.
Okay,
we should be
Yep.
specific about, yeah.
okay. Okay. Great,
So
okay.
is there a motion to table this until,
I would entertain such a motion from one of the board members.
We have to summarize everything.
No, I think I've got it here. I think we covered all
Okay.
the items. Chuck said he was happy. If Susan has any questions on capturing these items, you know, she usually sends Max and I a draft of the meeting minutes, and Max and I can make sure that it captures these things. And if, you know, if either of us have any questions, we can contact the rest of you guys. But I think we can capture these. Since it's not an actual motion, it's just making sure that the applicant knows through Chuck what things need to get addressed going forward.
Okay, I'll make a motion to table this project until we receive some further information and hopefully schedule a site visit.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, made by Barbara, seconded by Jim. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion signify aye. Barbara,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Jeffrey, and Johnny, I can see you guys
Aye.
saying aye, okay, and I'm also aye, so motion carried.
Oh,
And
yes,
Sarah,
Also,
I'm sorry.
also I.
Aye,
That's
good,
okay.
thank you, Sarah. Sorry about that. I got too many little boxes. Make this better, can I? Okay, great, thank you. So we are finished with that item. Thank you, Tyler and Jen, and Chuck, you're welcome to stay for other board business if you wish, but
That's
there's
okay.
no need. Okay,
I've done my share.
have a map back?
Come on, Chuck, you miss it. Come on.
Well, you know.
okay. So next on the agenda is, it says minutes, but I believe there's still outstanding the minutes of November 15th. Is that correct, Max?
Yes, they were deferred last meeting.
Okay, so they were deferred from last meeting, and gee, there were only 8 pages. God bless you, Susan. That was, the more I started reading through it, I would go, gosh, that meeting was long, and there was a lot in it, and you got all of it, and I had no changes. So, but since it is very long minutes, I just want to see whether the board is fine with
Oh, I'm sorry.
approving these minutes, or if there are any changes, or whether you want to defer again.
I'm fine with approving them as written.
I think the only reason we deferred last time was
It was a special.
we had a forum
Yeah.
for folks that were actually at that meeting
Yep,
that could say the minutes were good.
yep.
But
Well,
the
I'm fine. So that's
minutes
3
read
of
good to
Johnny,
me.
Johnny, Jeffrey, Sarah.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine approving them.
Okay. Any changes, Jeffrey, Johnny?
No, none noted.
Okay, could I have a motion to accept the minutes of November 15th as written?
A motion to accept those.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Made Jeffrey, seconded Johnny. All those in favor of the motion signify aye. Sarah,
Aye.
Barbara,
Aye.
Jim, Johnny, and Jeffrey are aye, and I am aye. So motion carried. Minutes are approved. Okay, so the only thing left on the agenda other than Land use ordinance amendments.
Yes,
Max, you want to take it away?
yes. I'm not sure if everyone did get the amendments in the mail. I would hope they did.
I did.
Okay, good. So as requested from our November meeting, so long ago, I put the context of the changes in their respective sections. And because most of these were not some massive radical changes to each of the articles, you'll mostly see maybe 1 or 2 pages for each article. So for example, Article 3 had primarily 2 changes, which happened on section 3.3.5, permit issued after municipal approval, and then 1 under section 3.4, public hearing requirements. I mean, other than a minor grammatical error that I just realized for
The toe,
yeah.
okay.
Other than that, these haven't really changed from the last time you've seen them. They were just requested to be seen in context to be sure that they fit in with the narrative of each of them. There was the discussion of the dimensional standards and me sending that out. I didn't really get that sent out, and I didn't send that out because I was focused on these at the time. And right now, there's actually some legislation going through the state right now. Stan has it somewhere on his desk, but it's a lot of talk regarding amending land use ordinances to address affordable housing. So it might really be best if we put the dimensional standards to the side and wait until that's approved by the state legislature, because it's very likely we're going to be dealing with the 2 things already. And might as well do it at that point, whereas this is just some minor cleanup work.
Yep.
But yeah, the changes for those who are listening for the first time, there were 2 minor changes in Article 3. There was 1 amendment in Article 7, which is the general performance standards, and that was to help clarify the fire chief's involvement in these applications, where he may make recommendations, but overall it's the municipal authority who has the final say on whether or not to accept or deny those requirements. And that's something Paul's been bit back and forth on whenever he does these. You know, does this mean if the board doesn't take the lockbox, do I have the ultimate authority, or do they? So that just clears it up. Article 9's changes was to address the design standards for major private streets. That was something to address what happened back when the Sincarfa solar farm happened. And there were questions about the fact that minimum tangents between curves of reverse alignment, the roadway crown, and the minimum curb radii at intersections were not applicable. And whereas intermediate and minor private streets did have some standards for those 3 items. So that just has the major private streets more in sync with them. Article 10, which is the specific performance standards, includes references to tiny homes and the decommissioning plan standards for renewable energy structures for commercial uses, such as solar farms. And both of those are to address the state standards that have been implemented in the past year or 2. The renewable energy structure ones, it references the main DEP's authority in solar farms in general. And then for non-solar farms, it just distinctly follows what the solar farm process is and just makes it applicable to all of them. And then for tiny homes, again, it's just following what the state language is. We don't have too much flexibility on what can happen in them. And so So that's Article 10. Article 11, which is the shoreline zoning article, includes a soon-to-be common condition that was included in their latest state rules, photographic records. So whenever someone is doing something in the shoreline zoning, something that is going to be required is a picture of the site before the construction happens and a picture of the site up to 20 days after the completion of the development. So for example, back in November, we had the individual who did the pier. This is something that would be applicable where they show their pictures to the planning board on the site, but when they're applying, and then when they're complete, when they're done with the development, they'd be sending some pictures into the code enforcement officer at least or up to 20 days when that project is done, just to show how the vegetation or development site is in its current state. Again, that's a state rule, and we just need to have it in our land use ordinance or shoreline zoning. And then Article 15, which is the definitions. I included the difference between small and large campgrounds, just because we do have that in the specific standards, but it was requested to have it in the definitions as well. And also the definition of tiny home, which that is word for word what the state definition of a tiny home is. Every single letter in there. So those are the house cleaning items I have.
Mhm.
There
Can
certainly could be more. Yep.
I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
Are we discussing these now? It's 7:45. Are we okay? All right.
Yep, let's just summarize it
I think
all.
we are, and I think we've been through these before, so anyway, go ahead, Barbara.
So on page 10-30, when it's 10.24.2.1.2, living space at least 750 square feet, where does that number come from? Why that number?
I believe when we discussed that, that came from the state, actually. This, yeah, I believe, and I'll double check it. I believe
Because
that,
it's a manufactured home, is that why it's all?
yes. We are allowed to have a smaller square footage, but we would have to put in some additional restrictions on it, such as that it came from that it was reviewed and approved by certain authorities. I don't have the exact names, but that's where the 750 came from. And the 14 foot dimension. I'm sorry, sir.
On Barbara's reference on page 1030. Which one are you talking about, please?
Yeah, it's the 10.24.2.1.2. Living space, at least 750 square feet.
I can't find it. That's too many numbers. 10.24 what?
0.2,
Point two.
0.1.2. It's near the,
Oh, living space. I got it. I got it. Thank
yeah.
you.
okay.
I will double
So
check.
that's a lot of square footage. It sort of seems like it's an industry thing trying to protect the industry.
Well,
It's
again,
roomy.
we are able to reduce it, but it requires adding in some additional.
Okay, let's find some more
But I'll confirm
facts
it.
about that. Okay.
I'll confirm
And then
it.
the other question I had, when we're talking about tiny homes on 10-46 page, what does it mean? It on 10.36.3 limit. No more than one tiny home may be placed on a lot. Now, why is it a lot there? And then when they're describing campgrounds, they say any area or tract of land. So what is a lot?
A lot is the property lot. So your tax map, essentially.
So if you have 80 acres under your name,
Yep,
that's one tiny home?
that's one tiny home. Again, this was something that I was following the state's language on it. falling under, that's just the limit.
Or 200 square foot tiny homes.
Right. I have that. I think part of where that limit comes from is that the tiny home is supposed to still be the principal structure. That's supposed to be the actual home. So I think when that state language was being developed, it was the idea that, well, if you're going to live in your tiny home and you want someone else to live in the tiny home, you might as well just split off the lot then and sell that lot to that individual who wants the tiny home.
Well, but I could visualize,
Or make
I
a
could-
subdivision of it.
well, I could, yeah, but I could visualize a family wanting to have a separate tiny home for another family member or something on their lot. That's, people have,
Accessory structures.
yeah, parent apartments or, whatever.
I believe, I don't know if it was in this one, but I think that was the other part of.
The last line. there,
Yeah.
6.3
Yeah,
location.
that a tiny home can be as an accessory structure.
Yep.
That's the other part of the limit that the state has.
It's the bottom section on that
Yeah.
page.
Very
Right.
last, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for pointing that out.
So you just can't have a house and then have a farm of tiny houses for all of your grandchildren, in other words.
Yeah,
So,
pretty much.
My concept is dashed.
Well, no, you could still do it, which is a subdivision at that point.
A subject, yeah.
That's the new suburb that we're creating.
Okay.
While
So,
we're talking about sizing,
Mhm.
one of the questions that I've had about this nomenclature regarding a house
right,
being at least 750 square feet, and I know that one of the things that's been proposed has been bring that down to say 600.
600, yeah.
And then the tiny house
400.
definitions is 400, so there's a space there.
Hmm,
I'm not sure what we do with that. If someone said, hey, I'd like to build something that's 500 square feet. Sorry, you can't do that. We don't have a definition for that. So I'm sure we wouldn't let it get to that point, but I'm just curious about how
Yeah.
that can be. The tiny homes thing obviously is something that's going to continue to be part of the discussion. If we're talking about affordable housing, and just because it's become so popular. So those definitions are going to get probably more and more defined, or need to get more and more defined.
Yeah.
Even the state definitions may have some room for improvement as well. Not that we're going to run ahead of them, but to think about what that might mean for, whether it's on a frame, a trailer frame, or whether it's on a foundation, and how those are all defined. Those are all things that I'm not clear on yet, and maybe none of us are. But that was just what was kind of coming into my head about tiny homes versus
Yeah.
houses.
Jeff, as I'm looking at this, the 750 square feet is specifically for newer single wide homes.
Yep.
It's not homes in general. It's specifically the single wides. And the research Max did before said you can't buy one less than that. I mean, that's basically the smallest size that they're making. If somebody wanted to come in and do a 600 square foot stick-built house, I think they'd get a permit.
Yeah, there's no
Right.
problem. There's no problem with that.
It was mostly focused
Do it as small as you want.
Well,
That's legit.
and I could still, and I'll double check or triple check to confirm that. But to Jim's point, yes. If you were to go to Ralph's Homes, it is a 750 square foot manufactured home they typically sell. If you special order it, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier, where you have to get the right certifications, and they can do it. It's just with all the work that goes into it and how much it's going to cost, you might as well buy the 750 at that point.
For to buy the standard one, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I'll still check on that, the gap you mentioned there, Jeff.
So there isn't, of course, I should be looking this stuff up myself, but there's no minimum sizing to get a permit for
A
a
stick-built
house,
home,
stick-built house?
a stick-built home, I do not believe so, but that's a question that I'd have to
Sure.
ask Stan.
I think the tiny homes becomes homes that are on a chassis or something that are essentially movable.
Right.
Right.
So that's where so that's good. I was with Jeffrey, that I didn't want there to be a gap there that would create a restriction on somebody, but somebody could still come for a permit. Good. Okay. So I think we've gone over this language a number of times. Does anybody have a problem with approving these changes so that they can move forward to be on the ballot consideration? So I don't hear or see anything. So is there a motion to accept these land use ordinance modifications?
I move that we accept them with profound thanks to Max for his patience and due diligence.
Amen. This is really, it's good. And I think I'm pretty happy with these, so I second that. Is there a second to the motion?
Sorry, I have a question.
Can I, well, you can have I'll open up for questions if there's, can I get a second first, or would you rather, you think we should change the motion?
I may not approve, I may not vote for it,
Okay,
depending on this. So I should have spoken up earlier. Can
Okay.
can we address this?
go ahead.
Okay, 11-21, top of the page, septic system permit. If the property is not served by public sewer, the applicant shall submit a valid septic system permit or a complete application for a septic system permit, including the site evaluation approved by the plumbing inspector whenever the nature of the proposed structure would require the installation of a subsurface disposal system. Sorry, where does, I gotta look up Article 11, sorry. I'm just worried, why is that there?
7 point, so.
Yeah,
11
if you need a subsurface disposal system, you should go get a septic system permit. Is that what it says?
In other words, instead of,
Yeah,
if you have a shed, you don't need one.
right. Yeah,
Oh, this is part of shoreline zoning.
yes,
Okay, got it. Never mind. Gonna do the vote again?
Is there a second to the motion?
hopefully we'll solve it all.
I'm looking for a second to the motion to
I'll
approve these
Second
changes.
motion to approve
Johnny,
the,
no, Johnny was ahead of you.
okay,
That's right. So made by Jim, seconded by Johnny. Any other questions or comments on this group of LUO changes? Go ahead, John.
I just have one, and it doesn't, it's already, I just am curious about it. The very last page, 15-30, it says unreasonable adverse impact. The criteria for a finding of unreasonable adverse impact are that the proposed project would produce a result that is, 1, excessively out of character with the designated scenic or other resources affected, including existing building structures and features within a designated resource, and 2, would significantly diminish the value of the designated resource. I was just curious, who decides what's unreasonable and what's out of character?
That's typically left to the discretion of the municipal authority approving the matter.
So if someone built a red house or something, it would be, I know, I'm just curious.
Well, not artistic. Well, but the board also has discretion. For example, if there was an application for somebody to open a business in their house, we had an application come up a few years ago that they eventually withdrew, but for it was for
Bar.
a teaching, it was, I'm going to characterize it improperly. So let me come up with a different example. Let's say somebody wanted to turn their home into a drug rehab center in the middle of a dense neighborhood, and the neighbors said, this is, you know, you're going to have people running around and or whatever. That may or may not represent, I'm not going to characterize it, but that may or may not represent an issue that where it's not in character with the neighborhood. The planning board has some discretion there, don't we, Max?
Right, so an example, so one of the examples is it's just tonight actually with the trucking terminal.
Sure.
So the character of the area is commercial. It is on Route 1. There are some neighbors there who are residential. And so that's something that the board just had to weigh on, you know, they're residential people, but they're that are existing, but they're also in a commercial area. So you had to give and take a few things where it is. But your example of the gingerbread house, for example, let's say you built that in the middle of the woods. Neighbors aren't going to have an issue with that, and it's not really impacting anyone. But build the gingerbread house in the middle of the historic village, you're disrupting the architecture and let's go with Scott's example of the drug rehab place. Let's say it's next to Miller School. I don't think I had to finish that example.
Right. I'm
So
just curious as to.
Right. So that because there's an area where by the term of it, it might meet the land use ordinance, but these kinds of things are in the land use ordinance because the character and nature of the abutters and the neighborhood and the land, all that stuff matters to the town. That's why we have a land use ordinance in the first place. So
it could also be like with wells, for example, we always have to be sure that if someone's going to be using a lot of groundwater, it's not going to impact the neighbors. So again, if you're far away and you have a well, you're not going to take from anyone. But you know, if you're in the downtown, you're not going to be on the public water system. You know, we got to make sure you're not taking from anyone. And if you are on the public water system, the water utility needs to make sure that they can handle your work. I think. Does that answer the question?
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah. I'm just very curious.
great. So we have the motion made and seconded to accept these LUO changes. All those, anything else?
Yep, I'm just
All
gonna
those,
check.
go ahead, Matt.
I'm just gonna do my check to make sure everything's all set with the two items everyone brought up, but that's.
Okay. Great.
And have we discussed the dimensional things, or is that coming? Is that,
That's gonna come later, just because
Okay.
the state's working on some new language for single family homes, so,
Right.
and multifamily homes, so that all might as well just tie in together at the same time.
okay. Got it.
So all those in favor of the motion signify aye. Barbara,
I,
Jim? Aye. Sarah?
Aye.
Thank you. Johnny's got his hand raised, aye, and Jeffrey does as well. And I also say aye, so these are approved. And with thanks again, Max, for working our way through that. Oh, I do want to add to the minutes, this is back on the CCOT example, but I remember that Chief Smeltzer's letter asked for a lockbox. And we should add that to the communication to Chuck at some point, that should be considered. So I wanted to make sure that was in the minutes. Sorry about that. Okay. Before we adjourn, is there anything else? I have something I wanted to raise when the cameras are off. Max?
Well, yeah, I was actually gonna say, there's just something that I kind of need to just tell everyone when the camera's on. It's nothing like that needs a motion or anything. It's just some
Okay.
logistic stuff in the end.
Okay, so I would like a motion to adjourn, and then, but then after we pass that, if everybody could just stay for a couple of minutes, I would appreciate it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
Motion made to adjourn by Barbara. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sarah. There being no debate on a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Barbara,
Aye.
Jim,
I.
aye, Sarah, aye, me, aye, Johnny, and Jeffrey. We are adjourned.